All right, everybody, welcome to the Fox 10 News Now stream, part of fox10phoenix.com. I do have a special guest today from ASU. He's a professor there, Ned Wellman. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, we're talking about a very interesting topic that you did research with, and it's all about job insecurity. First off, maybe what is job insecurity?
Right, so job insecurity is the fear, basically, that you might lose your job or you might lose some part of your job that's important to you. So you could still be job insecure if you felt like, I'm going to keep my job, but maybe they're going to cut back my hours or make me do some new task that I really don't like. So a fear of basically having your job lost or changed.
All right, and how did this all come about? It's been a lot of years in the making.
Yes, so academic research takes a long time. So we first came up with the idea for this project shortly after 2008.
Okay.
And at that time, because of the economic crisis, a lot of people were feeling insecure about their jobs.
Sure.
And the thinking was that when you were insecure about your job, you would do less things that were kind of helpful and good for the organization. But we wondered, would maybe being insecure with your work also cause people to actively do bad things that would harm the organization that they wouldn't otherwise do?
And what are some of the things that you came across that, wow, people are doing this?
Yeah, so we looked at two different types of misbehavior. It's called deviance. So one is called organizational deviance. That's acts that harm the organization in some way. So this could be, stealing supplies or falsifying an expense report or showing up drunk to work. Believe it or not, that was one of the things that we looked at. The other thing is called interpersonal deviance. So this would be if you and I work together, maybe I could start doing things to make you look bad or to harm you. So spreading rumors about you or sabotaging your work in some way.
Wow. So the people they'll be insecure about their position or their job performance. Is it performance too, or is it just they think they might be on the way out?
Yeah, it's more of the latter.
Okay.
So I think they might be on the way out.
So when they go out, so they'll pretty much go all in, and sometimes you've seen it where they showed up drunk and.
Yeah, there was some of that, and I mean it's important to say we didn't pick up on really high levels of this behavior, so it was more kind of periodically. But the people that did these sorts of things were the job insecure people, and we actually used a psychological theory called the theory of moral disengagement to try to understand why. And so this theory basically says ordinarily when you or I think about doing something bad, we feel guilty about that, and that keeps us from doing the bad thing. But sometimes that process gets switched off, so that's when you're morally disengaged, and then you somehow cognitively construe the situation, so you no longer feel like the things that you're doing are wrong, which makes it easier for you to go through with them.
Wow, and I bet you were seeing a lot of this when 2008, 2009, when really the job market was very grim.
Right, so we actually did this study in China, and it took us a while to design it, so by the time we actually rolled it out, there were sort of moderate levels of job insecurity, but you could imagine, given our findings, that in the aftermath of 2008, it might even be more pronounced, right, when so much job insecurity was prevalent.
And so some people would actually just start stealing supplies and other things?
Yeah, supplies. And again, it wasn't everyone that was doing these things, but actually we asked people to report on this themselves. So they had to, on one of the questionnaires, indicate how often did I do these different behaviors. So what we find is that people generally underreport. So really there's probably more of that going on than what we really found. But yeah, we found sort of things like stealing supplies, showing up late to work, taking time off without asking your boss, slacking on the job, all those sorts of things. People reported that they did more when they were feeling more insecure about
But if they were so insecure, why would they want to do things that could harm or even push them out immediately? Why go that route? Wouldn't it be the opposite, where you're trying to, do the best that you can at work? Why is it the latter?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one thing, I think a lot of these things are not things, like people weren't admitting to doing them to their coworkers, so they're almost secretive things.
Okay.
And I think that they saw them as a way of getting back at their company. So people expect a certain amount of job security. When you sign on, you expect if you do a good job, you're going to be rewarded by continued opportunities to do that work. And when that's violated, that causes this moral disengagement process to kick in. So I think that what happened was people weren't seeing these deviant behaviors as bad anymore, as little ways that they could kind of get back at or get even with the organization that kind of didn't give them the security they were looking for in their job.
Interesting. Now, what was some of the most interesting things that you came across in the study that you were like, wow?
Well, so one thing that we're interested in is not only does this exist, but how can organizations prevent it? And so I study leadership at ASU. And so one thing we're interested in is how can leaders kind of mitigate this process? And what we found is that when leaders had really strong relationships with their subordinates, those people were less likely to do these deviant things, even when they were morally disengaged. So as a leader, you can kind of stand in for the organization in some ways, and when you're providing the people that report to you with support and reassurance and taking an interest in them, then even if they may be insecure in their jobs, they're not going to switch off as easily. They're still going to sort of see you as a real person and see things that damage you or the company as bad and things that they shouldn't do.
Oh wow, interesting. And that's something there though. Now did businesses and companies get to see this as well, and have they chimed in on, wow, we didn't know that this could be potentially happening to some of our workers?
Yes, so I think it's just recently been published, this study, in the Journal of Applied Psychology, and normal business managers don't really read that journal, so it's just now trickling out. It's been reported in a couple of different outlets, so we're hoping that this will
I'll raise some eyebrows, huh?
Yeah, because, I work at a business school, and a lot of companies are adopting this model of employees are really free agents now, that maybe they shouldn't expect job insecurity, that they should build their portfolios of skills and talents and be ready to take them wherever. And I think that's true, but what we're finding is that there are also unappreciated costs to that model of doing business, that when people don't feel secure in their jobs, it has negative consequences for the organizational bottom line that we didn't necessarily appreciate earlier.
Wow. And now we're coming up on a new year. What does the forecast look like for the workforce in 2017? Is it more secure? Or
I do think now, relative to when we initially started this study here in the U.S., people are feeling more secure about their jobs. But I think, if you look at the past presidential election, there are lots of people that don't feel great about their future prospects. So this is definitely a prevalent phenomena. And again, this free agent model that's so prevalent within organizations, I think almost guarantees that some degree of job insecurity is going to be with us through the future. So the question is, how can organizations again begin to manage that in a proactive way to keep it from negatively impacting them?
Sure. And what I've been noticing, it seems like in the past, workers would be so loyal to a company, maybe 20, 30 plus years, their whole career at one place. But we're seeing it just seems more and more with the millennials that they'll do a year here, 2 years here. Does that cause more of the insecurity as well, because they feel like...
Yes, I think it can. So one other thing that we found in this paper is that people that felt like they had more and better alternative options outside of their company were actually more likely to do these bad things when they were job insecure.
Oh.
So if you feel like you're really in demand, you've been shopping around maybe for other positions, and then your current organization doesn't give you the security that you're looking for, it's going to be easier for you to sort of mentally detach. So in that case, sort of this model of job hopping, if you're someone that's very attractive to other organizations, it could promote, again, this sort of behavior that's destructive to your own company.
Yeah, and I could just imagine, too, on social media, I would feel like, because you're seeing your friends, you're seeing your families with maybe, I want that job, or I could do that job. Do you think that that plays a role, too, maybe?
It could be. I think there's always sort of the grass is always greener
that
goes on in people's head. And I know with social media, it's particularly easy to fall victim to that, where you see someone that's got, hey, I just got this great promotion at my job. I just, got this great new opportunity. I think maybe that might influence, again, some of these cognitions that people have about what amount of loyalty do I owe to my current company, and what are my opportunities like elsewhere.
Awesome. Now, if people want to read more on this, where can they go?
Good question. So again, this study is recently published in the Journal of Applied Psychology.
Okay.
ASU's website, called ASU Now, did a summary that's briefer. So actually, I wouldn't actually recommend going right to the Journal of Applied Psychology one. That's pretty dense. But the
heavy.
ASU one hits all the highlights. ASU Now. That would be a great place for people to start.
And what's it like seeing your work in a published journal? That must be an amazing feeling.
Yeah, it's really, really great. So the reason why I get into this is wanting to address problems that are relevant to companies and to help them with the results. So it's also really hard to get your work published in a top journal. They're reviewed by other academics, and so to be able to get something through that process and have it come out and is really gratifying. So,
yeah,
it's really exciting.
That would just seem awesome. What are you working on in the future?
Sure, yeah. So as I mentioned, my specialty is leadership. So I have a couple other projects related to leadership. There's actually one that's sort of, again, merges leadership and job insecurity, and that shows that when you're job insecure, you're also less likely to invest in developing your personal leadership skills. So lower level people within organizations, when they feel job insecure, sort of take a pause from doing things that better themselves and develop their skills for the future, because they feel like I might not be around in this organization to see the fruition of these efforts. So that's one other thing that we're working on. I have several other projects in the hopper.
Oh, great! That's amazing. And lastly, for people that are watching, maybe they feel job insecure. What are some things that they can do at their workplace? Where can they go to a boss? Can they go to a manager and kind of lay out what they're feeling, or what's the proper protocol?
That's a great question. So I would say it wouldn't hurt, because I think a lot of times people assume that their bosses and organizations know that they might be feeling job insecure, when in reality the organization might not know that.
Yeah.
So if you are feeling that way and it's causing you to have negative thoughts, it might be worth, especially if you really trust your immediate supervisor, to have a conversation with that person and just say, listen, I've heard this rumor or that rumor, is this true? Because sometimes, there really are foundations to these sorts of things, but other times it's just something that you heard and interpreted the wrong way. So that would be one thing, is to make sure that there really are, there's a foundation to your worries, that you're not being insecure for no reason.
Oh, that's great. Well, all great stuff. ASU professor Ned Wellman, thank you so much for stopping by and giving us your insight all about this job insecurity, and wishing you best of 2017.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for having me.
No problem. All right, we're going to show you folks now.